On this episode of the Everyday Leader podcast, Drew and I sit down with my friend Laken Kennington. Laken has been building door-to-door sales teams for over 12 years and has been really successful at recruiting people, enrolling them into the team, and then building a really strong culture of performance and of fun. Laken shares some really good insights into how he's gone about doing that and lessons that he's learned along the way, including overcoming failure, how important it is to provide leadership development experiences for the people around you, and what it means to really create leaders who can then go on to lead in the organization. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Today, Drew and I are with my good friend Laken Kennington, and it's cool to say that Laken is my good friend, and it's funny to reflect that I didn't even know him like 6 months ago. Laken is someone that I was introduced to really quick when we moved up to Utah, and just so you know, Laken, I consider you on the short list of people who I would say are the reason why God sent us up here. So,
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, excited for all of you listeners to get to tap into Laken's mind and experience today. Laken, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll keep good sipping about you as we go. But yeah, tell us a little bit about like your history, what you've been involved in up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if I have a big range of experience because I've really only had one job for the last like 12 years. But I went to school at Utah State, and like a lot of young men at Utah schools, I got recruited into trying some door-to-door sales, and went out my first summer and did well, and so I ended up going back and did well again, and so I just kept going and just kept getting better and better. And so I started knocking doors in 2012. I started a branch in 2014 and failed that branch and ended up back knocking doors in 2015 and 16, and then in 2017 started a branch again. And from we started one in 2017, then again in 2019, and then again in 2020-21. And Fox Pest Control started in 2012, and it grew to being like $100 million a year company. And in 2023, it ended up selling for $350 million. So it was really cool. It was a really fun ride to start out as a sales rep, end up as an owner of 5 different branches, and then to see it all the way through and a successful exit.
Laken, that's first off incredible. And for those who didn't hear before, Laken made a comment about just another door-to-door guy, and I took offense to that because I'm from the door-to-door world too, and I said we need more door-to-door guys. And I love that you shared, Laken. You said that you failed. Talk a little bit about that, because I mean, what an incredible resume, and it'd be easy to like skip over that part and just not mention that. And I don't know. I think that's really cool that you shared that.
Yeah, I always include that because I feel like all the success that I had after failing that branch came from lessons that I learned in that really hard year of my life. And I actually talk about this a lot, and how when you go to do anything, you start out as an uninformed optimist. Everything ahead of you sounds awesome and exciting, and it doesn't take long in door to door or anything else to get going and become an informed pessimist. And you find out that it's actually not as easy as you thought it'd be. Maybe you're not as awesome as you thought you were, and you can really slip down into what I call the valley of despair. And what most people do is they find something else to get excited about that they're uninformed about, and they start the cycle over. But
That sounds familiar, huh?
they jump from company to company, or industry to industry, or job to job, because they just go through one side of that cycle. But those people that are really successful, they use those hard times as data points to propel them to success. If you can cross that valley of despair, you end up as an informed optimist. You learn the lessons you need to, and then success lies just beyond that mark. And so, yeah, so I dated my wife for like 2 years, and I didn't dare marry her because I wanted to be like financially stable and, really said I didn't want any of those struggles that came with it. So my wife, Kaylee, and I got married in April, and I started my branch in May because I'd had 2 successful summers. I figured I had it figured out. So I took 14 reps to Chicago, and that year, Altera, which is a company that doesn't exist anymore, but they were a big deal back then, and another one called Proforce and EnviroGuard. There were like 4 companies that were opening in Chicago at the same time, and they all had much bigger and more experienced teams than me. It was 14 rookies and myself, and we just drove a couple Ford Rangers out there and thought we'd pull this thing off. And um, most of my reps quit, and I didn't even sell 100 accounts, which was way less than I'd sold the years before. And it was just really hard. I was super stressed. And I just remember, if you door-to-door guys that are listening to this, if you've ever been in an office where your entire team bagels in a day, like including you as the leader, what do you say in correlation the next morning, right? And I made a lot of mistakes. And at the end of that year, no one came back. I started at zero again. And as a partner, I'd incurred lots of debt, and didn't get paid a dime. And so there I was, broke. And after my 3rd year of summer sales, that's not the dream story that most people hope for. And here I was, exactly what I was afraid of, what I didn't want to happen when I married my new bride was there. We had credit card debt. We hadn't even been married a year. I keep telling this a funny story on this. I know it's getting heavy, but we were getting ready to go on the company cruise anyways because it was paid for, right? And we needed to get some cash out of our ATM, and we knew we didn't really have any cash. So, but we tried anyways. So on the way down to the cruise, we put our debit card into the ATM machine at the Golden West Credit Union to get some cash out. And not only did it not give us cash, but it didn't even give us our debit card back. She just ate it. It's like, you guys are in trouble now.
You can't have this back.
Yeah. So we're going on that cruise, and like we didn't even
Wow.
really get off the ship because we had no money, and the food was free on the boat. So anyways, it was really hard, but it was I just remember feeling like a sales rep would be better off if they sold anywhere with anybody than if they would have come with me. And that was really hard for me to swallow. And I couldn't find a reason for that not to be true. And so I felt really defeated. And just through great leaders, honestly, the founders of Fox Pest Control, they found another partner that was willing to buy my portion of the debt out in a failing company, and to help turn it around. And then they still needed me to recruit, which I was okay at recruiting. And so they gave me some incentives to just set up first meetings. And I didn't even know if I was going to go out, but they were willing to give me $5 per invite and $15 per first meeting. So at that point, I just needed $5. Like, I was that broke. And so I started to invite everybody, and I started to get really good at invites and really good at setting first meetings for recruiting, because I needed $20 to get those meetings. And I started keeping really good track of everyone that I interacted with and that I met with. And I created this system, and in like 3 months, I signed like 25 guys. So I was like, well, if I go out, I get an override on them. So I went out. I wasn't a manager. I got to kind of regroup, and I sold and had my best summer ever. And then had my reps did really good too. And more than half of them were coming back the next year. So I took 12 reps the next year, and I graduated from Utah State, and I ended up signing 50 reps, because the things that I learned in that 3 months of signing 25 guys, I just replicated and went out and I made as much money on overrides and recruiting as I did knocking my own doors. And it was a total shift. And then they asked if I wanted to open a branch again. And I was like, haven't, why would you even say that? Haven't you, I already failed one, you know? Um, but I was just stuck in this wrestle of like, um, holding a paper ceiling over my head saying, maybe I can't do this. And then looking at other people who didn't have as much momentum in recruiting or as much, they had less than I had, but they were successfully running branches. And I just had that feeling that if I was going to let this limit me, then I would be limited. I would let other things limit me as well. And so I just was like, I have to go and do this. So I went to do it again. And of course it's like, all right, I think I'm set. I've got good money, go to do it. We drive out to New York where I'm going to start my branch, just my wife and I before my team showed up. And while we're in the apartment there, my wife takes a pregnancy test and finds out the day before we started our branch, we didn't even have a single customer that we're pregnant with our first baby. And I'm like, oh no, what have I got myself into now? Um, but anyways, then from there on, it was just, there was just a lot of things, a lot of the painful lessons from that failed summer, I just was not going to repeat. And the biggest thing that I had to change was my mindset that I just shifted the mindset to if guys are going to trust me with their summer, they're going to be better off with me than if they sold anywhere else. And that made me recruit. It just made me recruit with a conviction that I was almost saving people's summers from going anywhere else. Like if they were going to come with me, they were going to be better. And I wasn't going to stop working until that statement was true. And we ended up having incredible summers out there. And I would find, I just got to where I would just try to find people that could help me solve the problems that I had. So I found a trainer that was just a way better door-to-door trainer than me. And I hired him to just train my reps. And then I would find I'd get him really trained and I couldn't get him to knock doors. So I hired a mental performance coach and he could get them to remove the resistance in their mind. And then we hired a leadership guy that helped our managers provide better experience. And then we ended up with more reps coming back and more reps recruiting and the momentum finally caught. But I just wouldn't have learned those lessons if I hadn't have really failed that first branch.
Oh, that's incredible.
That is awesome. What a story. I am I actually haven't heard the full version of that story. That's excellent. Um there's a lot to dive into there. Let's go back to like that shift that you pointed out that I think is so cool, right? Where you have this belief, this voice, that this listening that they'd be better off going with anyone but you. And then you're saying that you're able to like to shift that to like, no, they'd be better off with me than anyone. What did that look like? Walk us through how you shift from the one to the other and what was that process like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I read a lot of books on belief and belief work and the power of belief. There's a great book by Ray Dodd called The Power of Belief and how you can get your belief to start working for you, right? Instead of against you. And I do a lot of trainings, and one of them I draw an iceberg and I show someone sitting on an iceberg trying to row towards their goal. But if the current and their subconscious mind is going against the direction of their goal, then it doesn't matter how hard you paddle because there's 2/3 of the iceberg under the water going the other direction, right? And so a lot of it is choosing your belief first, and we call those setting your mental anchors. And then once you've set your mental anchors, you make choices in line with those anchors. And a mental anchor is what you hold on to when you're falling, right? Um, and so I would do that. I would just say, what do I want to be true about Laken? Like, what do I want? What does it mean to be Laken? And what do I want it to mean to be Laken? Even if it's not true right now, what do I want bad enough that I'm willing to work towards? And I would set those things. That was the most powerful one. That, dang it, guys with me are going to be better off than anywhere else. And and if they ended up better off somewhere else, it wouldn't be because of a lack of effort, right? Another one would be like, I do hard things and I love to work. I I just was tired of like work being a bad thing, or a like, I want to work less, instead of like, man, I just love to work. Or I love being on the doors. The doors are my happy place. And I just was not true my first few years, but it became true. Because I wanted to be. So a lot of that, deciding it, and then if I couldn't if I couldn't see myself doing that, then I would try to pick like the best person I knew and just ask, what would that guy do? So my hero was a guy named Mike Romney. He was the founder of Fox, and just like total stud door to door guy. And so I would always be like, well, what would Mike do in this situation? And I would just try to act like what I thought Mike would do, and I'd always act better than the natural Laken would, you know. So just call that slotting in a hero and emulating them. And anyways, that's the process that I had in doing that.
That's excellent. What do I want to be true about me, or about my company, or about my team? That's so good. Slotting in a hero. Love that. I'm also certain that you've been slotted in a time or 10, like in someone else's mind when they're going through this kind of stuff.
Oh, maybe it's probably, my earlier managers were probably like, I can't believe that guy did it, but my later ones, I think they had a little more respect, and I just got better with time, you know.
Yeah.
How about Laken? What would you tell, whether it's a door-to-door guy or one of our listeners who's they're in the middle of failure right now? Like what would be your message to that person that's in the middle of some of that, some
Yeah,
of those experiences you had to go through?
yeah. There's a couple of quotes that I really like, um, that I just keep at the forefront of my mind for times like those, because it seems like, I feel like I'm in it more often than not. Um, but one thing that I tell myself, a quote I really love, is that, it says that, ships are safe in the harbor, but they're meant to be at sea. And along with that one, there's a quote that says that, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. And so if you can start to um, be grateful for trying things, because really, if you're in a growth mindset, you should be looking for those opportunities to stretch and grow yourself. And the third quote is that, that the pathway of least resistance makes crooked rivers and crooked men. And so those are the quotes that I remember and I tell people. And when I'm preparing the minds of door to door reps every summer, it's just that, um, they get to a spot where they want to do hard things, and they're looking for hard things, and they're looking for challenges. And then when it gets hard out there and they come to me complain, I say, look, isn't this great? This is actually exactly what you signed up for. Like, bring it on. This is why you're here. And I promise you, this is what you're going to look back on and be able to tell triumphant stories about, if you stay in the boat. Um, if not, let's be another thing that, that maybe you wish you would have done. And that's just it. In door to door, I don't think I was remarkable in any way, but I just stayed longer than almost anybody. Nobody does door to door for 13 years, 12, 13 years. Um, and so if you just naturally show up for that long, you're going to end up getting better at it, building momentum, doing it, but you just have to stay in the boat and continue to learn and grow.
Laken, do you do any sailing?
No, never done it.
A lot of good boat analogies.
Yeah, I know. They're good ones, right?
Yeah.
Just sailing in life.
That's right.
Laken, talk to us a little bit about like this idea that you probably didn't always love door to door or knocking doors or the summers.
Or the hard.
Yeah, or like the hard part of it, and yet you did. What's that like, right? Because like I feel like Drew and I both spend a lot of time talking to people and to ourselves about like what do you want, like engage in what you want, and sometimes I think that that's conflicting for us and for a lot of people when it's like, well, this other thing, is here and like I don't want it, and it's part of the journey or part of the path. What can you say about that? Like your experience confronting that over and over again, when a lot of times it was maybe something you didn't really want.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, for one, when you're doing something that is in line with where you ultimately want to be, it's easier to do those hard things. And in fact, when I'm recruiting door-to-door reps, I try to find out where they're at and where they ultimately want to go. And if a summer of sales feels out of alignment with that, it's like impossible for them to logically make the decision to do door to door. And so my goal in recruiting is to show them how a summer of door to doors will actually accelerate them towards their goal and where they want to go. And I knew that I knew a couple of really key people, Mike Romney being one of them. It was just a magnificent man. And there was another guy that was his name is Clayton Cook, and he married my cousin. And I just thought he was an awesome human being. And then the first managers I had in my office, is Morgan Titus and Sean Radvansky. Like, I just met them, and I just thought, if I have to knock doors to be like those guys, then I guess I'll knock doors to do that. And so really who I wanted to become was just a really good man. I wanted to be able to want to have confidence. I wanted to be able to communicate in a strong way. I wanted to be able to lead my family, and I wanted to provide in a good way for them. And so, because that was what I really wanted, um, uh, it made all of the hard, instead of feeling like a crisis, feel like an opportunity. And um, And so I would go out there and I would experience and feel all these things. And I don't like to get my butt kicked by the same thing over and over and over again. So it would push me into a learning thing, into a solving thing. And my first year, all I had was YouTube and my friend Clayton that was calling, being like, I don't get this. I can't, how come this is so hard? And then later on, I ended up with coaches and mentors and mental performance guys, and just that I could just ask questions to learn. And so it all kind of just turned into like an experiment on myself out there. And that was pretty fun.
That's awesome. That's it. That's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess who were you've alluded to a couple people um who were leaders to you. What is it that they did that helped you along the way? Like how would you define, I guess, leadership, and then
Yeah.
maybe some examples of those that were those leaders to you?
Yeah. No, good question. I feel so fortunate to have done door to door with Fox Pest Control. Is very unique. In that they truly did do this whole company was just have impact on young men and young women. And it was they wanted to be impactful on them as well in their growth. And they poured lots and lots of resources into leadership development and growth. And they would take us on leadership summits at the end of every summer, and they would cut off a week of the summer and take us to Hawaii or to Mexico. And the whole time we were there, we didn't talk sales, we didn't talk bugs. It was all leadership and goal setting. And so I was just really grateful for them to pour those resources into me. And they were always talking about the next book that they read and presenting on those books. And it got me reading again. I bet you I know I graduated college without ever checking a book out from the library. And now I just consume books. And I have for the last few years because it just makes me better. And um, so not only did they pour into us, but they gave us big responsibility, um, and lots of autonomy to figure. I just can't believe the amount of trust they would put in like a 23-year-old college student or 25-year-old recent grad, that they're like, yeah, we're going to risk, a branch goes into debt about $2 million before it turns the corner and comes back out. And I don't know if I would bet on someone like me. And I'm so grateful that they did. They asked us to do big jobs, and they were equipping us to go and actually do those jobs. What's remarkable about them, they had when Mike Romney and Brent White sold Fox, they had 20 partners, 20 partners like me, all of which they started out like me as sales reps for them, and they grew into their own partners. And that is remarkable. And a lot of what we studied was John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership and the 21 irrefutable laws. And really, the fourth level of leadership is a leader who can create more leaders. And that's what we got really good at, is being able to equip and train a leader to do our job so we could step up and do the next big job. And um, anyway, so that's what I loved about it, is that, man, they taught me and then gave me the reins. And when I got stuck, I would mentor with them, but they would never take anything from me. And even though I was a little frustrated, sometimes I'd go to them and want some answers. They'd never really answer any questions either. They'd always just ask, well, what do you think? I'd be like, well, here's what I think. And they'll be like, well, that could probably work. And inside I'm like, you probably know. Why don't you just tell me? But they were more interested in my learning and development, allowing me to fail and allowing me to get better, allowing me to use my creativity and resourcefulness to solve problems. And they're great mentors that way.
Nuggets right there. I think a lot of times leaders wonder, you know, why don't people do what I say or what they agreed to, or how do I get people to do this or that? And it can be really scary. And I think what you're highlighting here again is that by giving people space and support and trusting them and letting them make mistakes, it goes a long ways for people learning and growing in their own leadership. That a lot of times, like, we want to, I know I'm guilty of this sometimes, like I want to teach people leadership, but like, am I willing to create an environment for them to go be one? That's a lot scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so easy to be in a role where when someone, as a leader, manager, whatever that position is, where when someone comes to you and asks for advice, just to tell someone what to do. And so often that's not what people need. So it's kind of awesome to hear that they probably had all the answers too. They probably could have given you every answer, right? Every single time, because they'd probably been through and experienced it themselves.
Yeah,
So
it's so hard, but they would allow people to fail and to learn from those failures and to not let I was not never afraid to fail or to try something, because I knew that it wouldn't hurt our relationship or our trust. They wouldn't think any differently about me if I tried something and failed. And I know when I got to be an owner and I was developing partners and had a bunch of managers, it's hard to let people fail, because I'm the one that pays the price for it, right? It's my money out there. And so that I mean, I'm grateful they did it, but it was really tough for me to allow people just fail and then ask them what they learned and what they're going to do different, hold them accountable, and love them,
still
And
probably can set some guardrails, right?
yes, yeah, don't let them fail on the big things for sure.
Yeah, well, that's great. What do you, anything you want to share, like, in, like, now that that kind of stage season of your life is concluded? What do you want now? What are you up to now? Um, that any listener may be able to, hear that and tap into your wisdom.
Yeah, that's a good question. I I don't know really what I'm up to. I just really want to help people. And I, I went to school to be a PE teacher and a wrestling coach because wrestling was really hard for me too. And I was hoping that I could help wrestlers get through a season without it sucking so bad. And same thing with door to door. I'm like, how can I help people like have positive experience in door to door? And now that I guess know what I'm doing a little bit. I'm doing some leadership coaching to try to have impact on people that are starting businesses and that are in sales roles, um, to help shortcut the learning process and just have positive impact on people. That's what makes me happiest. And the reason that I loved Fox the most was creating and having some sort of impact on people's lives. And so that's my mission. That's what I'm out to do, is just try to have a positive impact on can anyone I can connect with. So um anyways, so yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's great. Well, I am a beneficiary of that for sure. And I correct me if I'm wrong. You're the most active on LinkedIn, right? So if someone wants to connect with you, that's the place to do it.
Yep. LinkedIn's where I'm at for sure.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on and sharing some of your story and your experience with us. Been really insightful.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yep.
Today's the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.